I grew up not being brown enough for some of the brown guys, and so I was get bullied growing up.
You owe a lot to Vietnamese
This
people.
Vietnamese uncle was my spirit guide. Like he was my like.
You owe a lot.
Seriously,
to
this was divine intervention. I'm telling you, that's when Julia Roberts changed my life.
First of all, to all the ladies out there, are you single?
They were gonna try to stab me and rob me.
There are months or weeks where 3D world calling you again. How do you reason with those?
What the fuck? And they see Vietnamese uncle freaking out, police dog barking at him, all these border security agents, drug dealer guy, hot girlfriend. It was like, everyone's like, what the fuck's going on?
How's your dating life?
Doing good things. But I'm gonna make sure I have a positive impact.
What was calling that? Like,
you get my jokes.
That is very good.
You're good.
Aren.
Hi, that's my name.
Aren! Did I get your name right?
You got it. You nailed it this time.
Aren.
Yep.
You need to scream more. Okay.
Yep.
We leave that for later.
It's no problem.
But I'm here with you. And honestly, you and the team and this whole beautiful place been holding me for quite a while now. And I'm just so excited to get to know you today. Finally sit down and have an in-depth conversation. And as I said earlier, I feel like we friends energetically before we actually talk about what do you do 2 years ago and 3 years ago and all of that. So I hope that we're going to get to all your stories today.
Sure. Happy to do it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
You mentioned before we started that I was a mushroom to you. And that was an interesting comment. It made me think and ponder for a little while.
We talk about intro in podcasts, and I find that's one of the hardest as well.
Yeah. Intros are hard.
It's like how you do so that it's natural, but also capturing everything, because an individual is so dynamic and multidimensional. Like how you can capture somebody in 2-3 sentences is hard.
Yeah.
So I think you said, what am I mean to you? And literally the first thought in my head was, Aren is the whole mushroom trip.
And I've never in my life been referred to or called as a mushroom trip. And I'm here for it. That's cool. I'm down. It's better than you were like, oh, you're like an enema or something. Like it was like much.
An enema.
I mean, enemas aren't so bad. It could be worse. But I mean, like, it was better. Mushroom trip. I'm like, cool. That could be trippy. It could be fun. Maybe some profoundness. Might get a little weird at times. We'll have some good laughs. You won't know if like you're possibly, am I queasy or am I horny? I don't know. Like it's a lot happens during a mushroom trip that you're not sure about. So I think it's good.
I mean, we haven't spoken anything, and I've been screaming your name for at least like 15 times since so I think it speaks for itself.
She screamed my name a lot earlier. So
yeah.
Trying to get it right. Yeah. You nailed it.
And East and West. Can we talk about that?
East and West?
Yeah.
East and West what?
Your heritage.
Oh.
And your upbringing.
Okay.
I resonate with that a lot.
Sure.
Was born in Vietnam and then went to England for school since I was 10. And I always feel like I belong to nowhere.
Yeah.
And how was that experience for you?
It was interesting because I was born and raised in Vancouver, BC.
Yeah.
My heritage is Punjabi, Northwest Indian. But my dad was also born in Vancouver, BC. My Babaji, my grandfather, had immigrated in about 1955 from Punjab to Vancouver around that time. So my dad grew up in a time in the West when there was no other brown guys in his grade. He was the only brown guy. And so he got bullied a lot. Very, very white.
What made him to move? Do you know?
My Babaji moved to get a better life.
Yeah.
There was more opportunity in Canada. Many people in India were immigrating to Canada or UK for a better life. And so he went there, was working in the sawmills and started off there. And then my dad was born there, oldest out of 3 kids. And my dad was like, he grew up like a white guy. Like my dad is not very, very Indian. My mom was born in India, then moved to Vancouver, I think when she was about 9 or 11 or something like that. So she came after a little bit more. She's a bit more traditional, but both my parents are like very Canadian, like born, raised Canadian. Yes. Like their main language is English. We spoke English growing up at home. I'd only speak Punjabi to my grandparents. And obviously we weren't having like deep philosophical conversations. So I would just be able to be like, yes, I'm hungry. No, I'm not hungry. School was okay. It wasn't like a deep talk. My Indonesian is way better than my Punjabi now. because I obviously practice and use it quite a bit. But the East and West thing was I grew up not being brown enough for some of the brown guys, and so I was get bullied growing up. I was born there. I didn't speak very much Punjabi, so I was different. But then I also wasn't a white kid, so it was like I was different on both ends. But Vancouver is very multicultural. I grew up in a very Vietnamese area.
Yeah,
a bunch of my ex-girlfriends are Vietnamese. I had I've been to Vietnam.
Yeah. Okay, we heard that now.
I've been to Vietnam twice and met Vietnamese families and was the only brown guy there, and just be like Kong Sao, it's all good,
Kong Sao, Kong Sao means no worries, no problem.
And so it was like I've been in and I grew up with a lot of Vietnamese people in my past lifestyle. I was a drug dealer growing up after high school, and so I was in involvement with a Vietnamese crime family for a long time. It was hilarious. I was the only brown guy they trusted
in Canada,
right? East Vancouver, and I grew up with these guys, and it was just like a wild lifestyle of like Vietnamese uncles growing mass amounts of pot, and me finding guys to ship it to across the country, and it was like a crazy lifestyle for a while. And I didn't really like working with brown guys because I didn't really trust them because I'd had this weird connection with my culture. And then when it all got to be a bit too much and I didn't want to be in the drug game anymore because it was just like...
From what age to what age?
I got in, we found my best friend's dad's grow op at age 13. So there's a marijuana grow operation in my baseball coach's basement. Right. You find that at 13. It's a crazy world because it's the best and worst thing to happen to a 13-year-old because you got unlimited free weed, but also you have a developing brain. It's like it's a bad thing to happen to you.
So did you start to smoke then?
Yeah. 13 years old, I started smoking weed. Do you
remember the first time?
Yes, it was interesting. It was the very first time. I didn't know if I did it right. And so I was like, am I high? I don't really know. And then the second time I was super high and I was just like laying on the basketball court floor laughing. Like it was just like completely different experience. It was just so accessible, like so easily accessible to me that like it was so normal. So we'd just sell pot to buy a bottle to then drink with our 15-year-old girlfriend.
It was just like a currency exchange.
Yeah, exactly. And so that commerce of the marijuana trade was like so prevalent in Vancouver at that age, everywhere. And then when I got around 17, like last year, high school, grade 12, is when there was drug dealing gangs that were recruiting high school students to be drivers, so to run around and sell crack and heroin and crazy shit.
Wow!
So all of my friends group got recruited into a local drug dealing gang.
Reminds me of Top Boy on Netflix.
Yeah, kind of like that. It was wild, but we'd be driving to meet junkies, and
that is so dangerous.
It was crazy.
Do you know, like, obviously now looking back, you can comprehend things, but like back at the time, do you remember what was going on in your head? It was just like, oh, this is fun, or like it's an adventure.
It was just a way to make money.
Or was it just money?
It was money, but also my friends group was doing it, and things would slowly get a little crazier and a little crazier. Right. So you'd be introduced to like a new crazy thing, and then that would become normal. Then a new crazy thing, that would become normal. And then I realized like I didn't want to be associated with these dudes anymore. They didn't really care. They were a bunch of reckless idiots, and I left. Cut ties with those guys, and I was scared for my life for a little while. But I was only 18, but they're threatening me, and I was like, okay, I learned how to start fighting. I went to a kickboxing gym, and I went deep into martial arts, and I wanted to live at that gym. I was there every day. I'd sweep the mats just to like be around more. And the coach, the trainer, the sensei, he saw that I was dedicated, so he's like, okay, do you want a job? And I was like, yeah. Like, of course I do want to work here. And it was like $20 an hour, which was a lot of money for an 18-year-old.
What did you do? Like just cleaning the floor?
I was holding pads for the kids' classes. So I was an assistant teacher for the kids' classes. So I'd be helping out with the kids, and I was specialty assigned to this one autistic kid. There's one autistic kid in the whole school, but they wanted to, be inclusive for him. So I'd be holding pads for this one little Indian autistic kid. He had the little gutti, like the little mini turban. And he would not be even watching, and he'd be throwing punches. I got kicked in the balls so many times. Like, it was just like, kind of thing. And I had to like learn to deal with this kid. And it was an interesting situation because now one of my tattoo shops funds a school for mentally disabled Balinese children. That was like my route in to dealing with mentally disabled children, autism especially, where
because you got that first-hand experience.
Yeah, I got kicked in the balls enough that I was like, I can help these kids. I started wearing a cup to go training, but I just had this another level of compassion for them because I saw how hard he wanted to try and wanted to play, but he didn't have the faculties of coordination. And I was like, okay, like it did something to me.
Yeah,
to see that not all of us are born the same way.
Yeah.
And so later on, it was a funny karmic loop to come back to when I opened my first tattoo shop here, which was still my most successful business, still a small one, but per square footage, that business does the best because we were connected to helping fundamentally disabled.
Yeah, the why.
Yeah, that was it.
But it was the fear of those gang members that actually led you to the gym.
Yep.
And that's how it's
started. I needed to learn how to fight.
Started.
I just need to learn how to fight. That was it. I just knew that I needed to be strong, and I got put on
protect yourself.
And then I learned community and respect, and I learned connection, and I had a new friends group, and it was amazing because it was a brilliant time for me because I made all these new friends, and I started becoming a skilled fighter. I was on a fast track to become a black belt because I was so dedicated to be there.
What kind of martial art was that?
It was kickboxing.
Right.
Muay Thai kickboxing.
Right.
And so I loved that place. Like, it was so good for me to be around there. And then a few years into that, the same things come knocking on the door. It's like, well, I want a nice car.
Yeah.
I want girls to like me. I want money. I'm so broke all the time. And then I started realizing some of the older guys at the gym were in organized crime.
Right.
I was like, oh shit. So these guys are also doing it. They're just doing it smarter. And I get it. They're not running around, doing hand-to-hand deals. These guys are selling large amounts. I was like, oh, this is the way to do it. Yeah, this is the way to do it. Don't see customers, be a middleman and supply other drug dealers. And I was like, that's smart. And so I started learning how to do that. And that's when I started making a lot of money because I was sending, 50 to 100 pounds a month.
What drugs are you talking about?
Started off with marijuana.
All right, okay.
And then I got to MDMA and then cocaine and then Oxycontins. And then, if you needed a case of handguns, I could find it for you. It started escalating because once you know a person who can get one thing, you can start to get everything. And that's what I kind of prided myself on. By the time I was 23, 24, I could get you anything you needed, literally.
How is the currency of trust in that world?
I learned a lot from this actually in business now that I saw that I learned then was to build trust quickly.
Yeah.
And you needed to be able to, my intuition got razor sharp during this time because you need to know if someone's going to rob you, if you trust somebody, what their intentions are. So I got really good at picking up small details in people and then seeing if I was able to trust them or not, and also convey trust and to bring in building trust with people. Because there's many times you get burned in that world. It's commonplace to get stolen from or robbed or, people cheat you and stuff. It's part of it, right? So it's a crash course in human trust building. It's crazy.
Is there any crazy story you're so near death experience or you just felt like you were fighting for life?
One time I got robbed by these two junkies, and they had bought off me about 4 or 5 times. The one guy bought off me about 4 or 5 times. So I was like, oh, okay, it'll be all right. And it was always a small to medium order. And then one time he wanted a large amount. And I was already kind of partying and I wasn't thinking too clear. I was greedy. But my intuition was something's wrong because he was super late and I had to go out after and I just felt something was wrong, but I still went for it. And so I hopped into his BMW and there was a guy waiting in the back seat that put a rope around my neck and pulled it, and they put a knife to my throat. And I was like, oh, I caught it. And I could see they were gonna try to stab me and rob me. And I tried to open the door, but he put the child locks on, so I couldn't open the door to get out. So I was catching it with my throat and being choked. And then I had a box. It was about $3,000-$4,000 worth of drugs. Yeah. Nothing crazy. So I tossed it out the window and tried to fight my way out of it.
Right.
But then I realized they had one more guy.
Right.
And so there was another guy waiting outside of the car to get what I dropped, and he had a gun. And I was like, oh, fuck. So I just let him have it.
Were you this tall?
Yeah, at that time I was this tall.
Right. Yeah. Again, this big.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was a little skinnier. I was 23.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
23, 24. So I was doing a lot of drugs at that age too. So I was much skinnier.
The different physique. Yeah. But you this tall.
Yeah. But I was also a trained fighter. So I was 2 guys, I'll find my way out of that. No problem.
Wow.
But a guy with a gun.
So what happened? You ran away? You got out of the car?
I punched one of them. The other guy had a gun, stopped it. I let him have it and left. And I was just frustrated after, damn, I just got robbed. Is an embarrassing feeling, and I was shook up about it. And it sat with me for a while because it was a long time that I was like, damn, what do I do in this situation? Yeah. I was trying to hunt the guy down. I was trying to find him. I found his girlfriend, but they had recently broken up. So she said she could help me, but it wasn't
Not
super
solid.
I couldn't find
lead.
him. Yeah. So I just ended up. Yeah.
So did it change something in you from that incident?
The first time I actually ever got robbed, I was 21, and I got set up by a couple guys that I thought were my friends that were much older than me, and they were known killers. So it was really heartbreaking because I couldn't really do anything about it. I was younger, they were older, they were known to be some serious dudes. One of them went to jail for manslaughter. They were serious guys. They actually killed people.
No
so
mercy.
It was oh man, they came to my parents' house and robbed me. One of them took me out to eat, and the other one he opened up the window for him while I went to go get him something. So then when he took me out to eat, the other guy came in and I had 17 pounds of pot at my parents' house, and they took it. And I was like, fuck, like it was heartbreaking because like I got set up by my friends, and that was a big hit. It was a deep betrayal. And then when when I started telling people that they did it, they said, if you tell people and you slander our name, we didn't do it. Like we didn't do it, so don't tell people we did it. Obviously, they're lying. And if you tell people we did it, we're gonna charge you $5,000 or tax you, or else you're gonna get it. And I was like, fuck. So not only did they rob me, now they're taxing me. So it was really stressful for a 21-year-old kid, right? I never paid the tax, and I was like, if a beating comes, it comes. Fuck it. I wasn't gonna like lose face like that to the neighborhood. If I pay a tax, it's really embarrassing. So I didn't do it. Nothing ever happened out of it. And it took me until I was in a meditation retreat in the Himalayas. Like,
wow. Okay, wait.
Yeah.
1 second. Mushroom. I told you. This is a mushroom experience. Okay.
Totally.
So you're doing all of this. Why are you having meditation
not
retreat?
Then. This is way later
right,
when I processed this.
Okay. When you process
this.
this.
Okay, we'll get to that. I had a few of these traumatic experiences in the game. There was many crazy things that happened. I remember meeting the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico. I remember just so many wild things, friends getting kidnapped, shot. Like it was crazy lifestyle. And I realized like I didn't want to be a part of this at all.
Yeah. And what point was that? How old were you?
25.
Yeah.
And I was deeply addicted to Oxycontins. I was like my whole life ran on like, cool, I just stayed high all the time so I could work. And it was like every waking moment I had.
What does it do to you? What is it called?
Oxys are opiates.
Yeah.
Opiate painkillers. Right. And basically I felt focused. I felt dopamine rush. I felt like it just felt good. Like you just feel great. And so that was like, I was consistently high on it, but if you're not on it, you're going to feel sick. Like you need it. So it's really like a toxic cycle, right? And fentanyl is killing people. They were fentanyl Oxycontins, but I was selling thousands of them a month. So it was like, I was getting high on my own supply. And the street price of the amount of drugs I was doing when you add it all up was about $15,000 a month. So it was a crazy amount of drugs. My cost was probably like $4,000 or something. So it was a lot. Like it was way too much, right? So I'm surprised I'm alive at this point because the amount that I was doing would kill most people. So it was really, really wild.
Was there an instance where you were like, I'm probably gonna go?
Yeah, there's a few times where I was like, this is really like not okay. Like I'm just doing, this is just a really crazy lifestyle. And I tried to get clean a few times and it wasn't easy because I still had this huge ego that I thought I could be a drug dealer and not do drugs because I was so addicted to the money more than anything. It was the money, the status, the power that were the really addictive things like place in the world.
So you say the addiction to money and power is more than the drugs itself.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And it's just because it's a lifestyle.
It was having a purpose and place in community, like having power, having the ability,
an impact. Yeah. People need you.
Exactly. And it was just like I was a somebody. I had a nice Mercedes, I had Louis Vuitton everything, I had a hot girlfriend. It was just like the lifestyle. I was in love with that. And I didn't know any better. I didn't know there was other ways to live. And then I started seeing the walls crashing in on me. I was like, this is not going to end well.
Yeah.
I had this impending feeling that I was getting up dead or in jail. Like I just knew like my friends were kidnapping each other. People were getting shot. People were getting caught around me. One of my workers had like somebody OD on his couch and he had a bunch of my work at his house. So it was like things were getting really crazy. And then my best friend for 20 years, he's my best friend since I was like 6, pretty much was not paying back a debt that I owed the Vietnamese guys. And it was like $60,000. So it was like, I sent him work so he could start his life over in Toronto because he had a hit out on his head. And if he didn't pay, and he was like, I'll pay you when I can, but what if I don't? And I'm like, what do you mean? What if you don't? Like, you're my best friend and I owe Vietnamese mafia money. They're my buddies.
Vietnamese
mafia. Yeah. So like they're like, we were cool. Like it wasn't, they knew me, we'd meet each other at our parents' house. Like we were sweet, so it wasn't like, they were flexing on me, but it was my reputation. Yes. So I was like, hey, like I have to pay this. These are my people, and it was really like a difficult, crazy time. And my heart was broken. And I was like, man, if this is like what my best friend will do over money, like I don't want any part in this. This is bullshit. There's nothing good in this world that's going to work out. Everything's a constant cycle of suffering. Nothing's real. Nothing's actually worth it. I'm not helping anybody. My talents aren't being used well. Like this is just a waste of my life.
And then what did you do?
And so I did a plant medicine called Iboga. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
This is crazy. It's like the African plant root ayahuasca like
It
version.
just came to you, some friend
I was seeing a
introduced?
counselor.
Right,
So I was
okay.
talking to like low-key, no one knew. I was actually seeing a counselor, and I was like, look, I'm a drug dealer. I'm addicted to drugs. I don't like this lifestyle. I need to find a way to like get clean and stay clean and figure my shit out. He's like, have you tried iboga? Have you heard of this? I'm like, what the fuck is that? And it's a African plant root that's a plant medicine from the Gabon region in Africa that's like ayahuasca's angry father. Like it's fucking hardcore. And it's
and
like,
this person, this counselor, someone who works for the government?
Yeah. But he was like pretty alternative counselor, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, look, it's not exactly like a government funded situation.
Yeah.
So I rocked up to these dudes, like they rented a townhouse in Vancouver, and they're two dudes who were facilitating this, and they're doing case studies for the University of British Columbia, so they could try to get government funding. So I was one of their case studies, and the treatment was like $7,000 or something, and I showed up and paid all in 20s, so a brick of cash. And they were like, I was like, yeah, they're like
$7,000 for the experience.
Yeah, 1 week.
Oh right,
it was a 1 week.
Yeah, treatment.
It was a 1 week of flood doses, of test doses and flood doses. I did that for 7 days straight. It was insane. It was a crazy experience. And so they see me.
Is it considered psychedelic?
Yeah, definitely. It's a plant medicine,
right?
And you definitely hallucinate,
right?
And it's just like an intense experience because you can't move, and it was like there's this replaying motion that continuously goes on, and I saw my entire life review, like, and that everything that was causing suffering for me was my fault. Like I'm the one responsible for this. It's not my neighborhood. It's not my dad. It's not the people I grew up with. Like, you're the one who made the choices. You have to eat your karma, and you have to shift. And I was trying to fight it because I was like, no, I still want drug money. I still want drug money. And I threw up so many times in this ego place. And when I was kind of getting through it, I could see like, yeah, this isn't the way. Like, you're gonna have to figure this out. And that's when I watched a movie, because they're like, you can in the daytime you can sit, smoke some pot, and watch movies. And I was like, okay, but they're like, watch happy things. You can only watch like happy documentaries. You can watch things that are like
inspiring.
Inspiring. Don't watch anything violent. It'll come back in your journey, and because you sit the journey all evening, and then you just sit there and shiver and try to sleep during the day. It's fucked up. And I was coming off of the drugs. I was trying to. And so I've pretty much watched every happiness documentary and Buddhist documentary and stuff like that on Netflix. And the last thing available changed my life. And that's when Julia Roberts changed my life. And I was sitting there and I'm watching Eat, Pray, Love. And she's in the market scene in Ubud. And I'm seeing the Balinese woman do the prayers. And something hit me directly in the heart. And it was like, oh shit. Like that, whatever.
Right now.
That, whatever that was, like, I need that in my life. Like, I don't know where, why, how. I had no idea where Bali was. I'm like, I need to go there. And I looked on my computer. I'm like, I'm booking a ticket right now. And it was for my 25th birthday. So I spent my 25th birthday in that iboga session. And 2 days later, first I had to figure out where the fucking Bali was. And I was like, where is even Indonesia? I'm like, where is Indonesia? I thought it was near Japan. Okay, it's near Australia. Okay. Booked a ticket, landed alone. A couple days later, show up to Yoga Barn with diamond drug dealer earrings, Louis Vuitton t-shirt, Salvatore Ferragamo man purse. Like, okay, let's do this, And I still had 3 cell phones. I had a encrypted PGP, like a encrypted cell phone for international emails that would go to other criminals. And like, it was just a crazy lifestyle. Like, it was just like, I was doing a yoga teacher training. I decided to learn yoga, and I did my first yoga teacher training while I was still a drug dealer. And it was a crazy fucking turn of events because I was doing like international drug deals while I was trying to learn.
What was calling that? Like, is that some higher spirit within you? Like, what were you following?
I always had, because I used to train kickboxing. Like, I went to Thailand a few times, and I always loved the Buddhist culture, and it was something that called me to it. And I had Vietnamese girlfriends, so Buddhist culture was something that really landed for me. Like, I had a lot of respect for Asian wisdom, Eastern mysticism, and something was calling me back to my culture. So I was like, I need to go to India sometime. I need to integrate the stuff. Yoga seemed to be like, okay, yoga and meditation seemed a lot better than going to like rehab or something. Like, I was like, I'd rather be a yogi than devote my life to like the 12 steps or something. Like, it didn't feel like it was me. And so I just went crazy into spirituality and meditation. And like, when I first started, it was obviously a rocky path. It's not like you're fixed right away. It took a lot of work. But I noticed that I was happier being around this type of people and this type of teachings. And I was like, okay, there's something pulling me into that direction.
Yeah.
And I really realized that there's that transformational power from it. I was like, this is worth going down this path.
Yeah.
And I failed my first yoga teacher training. I had a full sleeve tattoo during the training. I was, on Tinder. I was just like not taking it totally seriously. I was still very new.
In the 3D world, full on.
I didn't know how to like do it yet. I was still cheesy and not quite,
But deep down, there was a curiosity.
Definitely.
And there was this, like, you don't know where you're going, what you're going to do, but you just know that you're going to get better.
Definitely. Because then when I finished that yoga teacher training and I had to go back to Vancouver, I knew, I was like, no, I need to move here. I need to be in Ubud. I need to be in Bali because I could be someone totally different.
Yeah.
And I could get away from all this shit.
Yeah.
So I knew I had to sell everything I had, get out of everything I was doing and move here, which was the hardest 6 months of my life at that time because it was crazy to get out. And I think when you're trying to do something to shift completely, the universe will test you to see how bad you really want it. And I got tested like crazy. It was a wild time.
Do your parents know any of this?
They knew when I was trying to get out that I told them everything. I was like, look, I'm this is where I'm at. And I was at like a kind of a rock bottom in my life. And I'm like, I need to get clean off these drugs. I'm not happy. And they had an idea because all my friends were shady. We'd pull it up in luxury cars. I moved out to a nice apartment downtown. I had like a job, but like there's no way it would have. I bought my first apartment. Like there's no way everything added up. And a bunch of my like cousins or aunties and uncles, like they had an idea who I was and who I hung out with. So they would be telling my parents. My mom would ask me one day, she's like, "Are you a drug dealer?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "Okay." And I could tell she just didn't want to, she didn't want to hear it. Right? And so then when I was able to go and fully get out, I was at the airport leaving with my girlfriend at the time to move to Bali. And I had a feeling
she moved with you.
Yeah. We unplugged, sold everything, and she was moving with me at the time. She was amazing. And I thought I was under investigation. Like things were really indicating I was. And I had a lawyer on retainer. And I was like, okay, this is like just in case shit goes down. But the lawyer's like, don't make any sudden movements. If you move quickly to leave before your flight, you're gonna. This is bad. And I overdosed during a drug deal. So I finished a drug deal. I was in a hotel hallway, and I had a briefcase full of cash, and I passed out.
And this is when after Bali, after your retreat, after yoga teacher training.
And I was doing everything I could, and I had a flight booked for February, and this happened in like early January.
Yeah.
So I was getting out, but I had to do everything I could to make enough cash to get out, to sustain me being out there and try starting over. And I passed out, and I woke up with like 3 security guards and 2 cops and a firefighter around me. I was in a hotel and passed out, so they got medical attention. And I was like, oh shit. They're like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. They're like, you seem to have passed out. Like, we need to take you to the hospital. And I was like, no, I'm good. They're like, you seem to have been doing drugs. Would you like to go to jail instead? I'm like, let's go to the hospital. and I was so surprised they didn't search me because in my pocket I had 3 cell phones.
Yeah.
In my left pocket, I had like an ounce of cocaine that was just like, I was in personal use. I had a bag full of cash, and in my truck, I had a loaded handgun with a silencer on it. It was really, that's a very bad charge. It was something I was flipping. I was selling it to somebody else. It wasn't mine. But still, if you get caught with a handgun with a silencer, you're going to go to jail for at least 7 years. It's attempted murder charge. So it's really bad in Canada. So that was like the biggest wake up call for me, because I was like, well, firstly,
were you scared?
At that point, I was ashamed of myself. I was like,
were you scared?
That exact moment, I was more surprised, because I could not believe that they didn't search me. And then I was scared that I was under investigation. So I got really paranoid, because I was like, maybe they did find this stuff, but then they were searching for a larger network around me, or they're observing me further, and that wasn't the time for me to get me for that. But that didn't make sense either. So I was really confused, right? And I was on a lot of drugs. So I was like, oh no. So it was like really like a fucking rock bottom for me, that I was like, time to go now. And so then when but my lawyer was like, don't push your flight earlier, because that's going to trigger things. So I was like, fuck. So I had another month to wait of like, oh my God, like this is a crazy situation. And when I got to the airport, before I was leaving to the airport, and people who owed me money were paying me money. I was trying to get out and leave, packed all my bags. It's a really crazy time to get out and leave. My friend gave me like this marijuana THC oil for the flight out, and I was going to go get clean in Bali and move there with my girlfriend at the time. And as I took this oil on the way to the airport, I got to the airport, and you know how you need to have a flight out of Bali to get in? And I forgot about that. And so I didn't have that flight. I already took this oil, and then they were like, where's your flight out? So we had to stop and book one before we got let into the actual departures gate. So that ate up like a good 20-30 minutes. So by the time I started going through security, I was getting high. And so I was like stoned going through security. I had bleached everything, so there was no contact with drugs. I was professional. But when I got onto the airplane hallway, finally after an hour of getting pretty high, when I finally was about to leave, and I'm like, you're gonna get out, you're gonna start your life over, good job. And I got onto the hallway for the airplane. There was 6 border security agents and a police dog waiting. And they go, you come over here. And I was like, oh fuck. My heart sunk into my stomach. Like, this is bad. I was like, they're waiting.
I mean, my heart is like jumping up my chest right now. I'm like, oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they started sniffing me. The dog was sniffing me, and I had drugs on me to get me to Bali, but I had like fentanyl, Oxycontin, so I didn't think they could smell that. But I had
you still had that on you?
Yeah, because I couldn't go like an hour and a half without doing drugs at that point, or I would be I wouldn't feel good. So I needed enough to get me to Bali, and then I would get clean. That was the plan. And the dogs were sniffing me, and the cops like, where are you going? And I was super stoned, so it was really jarring for me. And I was like, Bali. He's like, how long are you going for? I'm like, I don't know, like 2 to 3 months. He's like, how do you not know how long you're going for? I'm like, well, I'm considering moving there. And he goes, are you running from something? And I was like, fuck.
Oh my God.
Fuck. Like that's it. I'm done. Like they're getting me, and I'm going to go to jail. Yeah. And I'm like freaking out, like, oh no. And the dog's sniffing me, and it's like really distracting. I'm super stoned. And he goes, you're acting suspicious. Let's go to secondary questioning. So now we're going away from the plane.
Oh.
And I'm like, fuck. And so this like rebellious kid in me comes out. It's just like, fuck it. If you're going to get pinched right now, if you're going to get caught, take it like a man. Don't be a bitch about this. So I go to the cop and I go, look, bro, if this is just for me, let's get it over with. And he goes, why would you say that? This is a routine check. I'm like, fuck. And I realized they stopped another guy, a Vietnamese uncle. And he's there getting talked to. And they're like, okay, so if we open your suitcase, what are we going to find in it? The one they're going to take it off the plane. So if they take my suitcase off the plane, I'm missing that flight. But in the suitcase, I had some more drugs and a fake identification set that I just somehow decided to bring with me because it cost me a lot of money that I used to rent apartments back in the day, but add fraud to my charges. So I'm like, I'm going to be fucked. I'm just like, clothes, but I'm so high, right? And my girlfriend at the time is like, you need to shut the fuck up. Like, she's like, I'm bombing the situation. She needs to be the one talking. I'm too stoned for this, right? This is bad. This is going very bad for me. And just then he's going to call to get my suitcase off the plane. So I'm going to miss the flight. And that's like, I'm going to go to jail. I just know it. I'm fucked. And the Vietnamese uncle all of a sudden screams, fuck you, you're taking my liberty, and screams in the entire, this is in the airport, like International Departures Lounge, Vancouver Airport. Hundreds of people around us all turn to look. And they're like, what the fuck? And they see Vietnamese uncle freaking out, police dog barking at him, all these border security agents, drug dealer guy, hot girlfriend. It was like, everyone's like, what the fuck's going on here, right? And they're like,
straight out from the movie.
It was crazy. You couldn't make this up. The dog's barking at him like crazy. And the security guards, the border agents are like, sir, are you threatening me? And he goes, fuck you, and screams it because they're pulling him off the flight. Yeah. They're not letting him go. Yeah. So he's flipping out. And so they decide to tackle him, and he's resisting arrest. And this whole scene is happening here. And the agent with us is like, like,
where are they going to put the tension to?
Yeah. And I'm
gotta
like,
pick one scene.
Hey man, like, we're just trying to go to Bali. Can you let us go?
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, go. And he lets us go.
You owe a lot to Vietnamese
This
people.
Vietnamese uncle was my spirit guide. Like, he was my, like...
You owe a lot
seriously, this was divine intervention, I'm telling you. So I get back onto the runway, that little corridor to get back on the plane, and the entire plane's waiting for us. We're the last ones on. This is an international flight, Vancouver to Taipei. Hundreds of people on this plane, right? It's a big-ass plane. All of the stewardesses are waiting at the door, like, hurry, 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 let's go. I'm like, oh shit. So we get onto the plane, they seal the door behind us, and the entire flight is looking at us, and they heard everything outside. It was really close by. So they heard, fuck you, you're taking my liberty. Are you threatening us? Fuck you, dogs barking, scuffle. I walk in. They're like,
what is going on?
All looking at us, right? I look at our seats. We're in the very back row in the middle. So we have to walk through everyone. The very last, everyone's seated, seatbelts on. Like, this is they're like, what the fuck is going on, right? So we get, and my seat's in the middle, and I have to ask this old Chinese, grandma, like, excuse me. And she like gets out of the way. We sit down and she's like, what happened? And I'm like, I can't right now. Don't talk to me, right? We finally take off. And I'm like waiting, like, please take off. My heart's beating. So like I'm traumatized what just happened. It was the most intensely nerve-wracking experience of my life. My girlfriend's freaking out. She's like, you fucking idiot. Like she's so mad at me, right? Finally we take off. I go to the bathroom as soon as I can, and I sit on that toilet, and I'm just sitting there like I was laughing and crying at the same time. The emotions were so high that I couldn't believe that like I almost didn't make it. Like I almost went straight to jail. I almost didn't do it. And it felt like divine intervention. Like God came through and was like, here's your second chance. This was like, here you go. And I knew that was a gift. And I devoted right then on like, I'm going to devote my life to doing good things. Like I'm going to make sure I have a positive impact in the community. I'm going to make sure that I like give to charity and build some things that matter and help people. Like I know I almost just had it taken away from me, and I know how close I had it. Here you go. And so I like.
What was the first thing you did when you sat in that toilet? Breathe? Did you breathe?
It was that, yeah, likely, but I laughed and cried at the same time.
Yeah.
I had like a little breakdown. Like it was just a wild, like, oh my God, I just couldn't believe what just happened. And then when I got clean in Bali, I started really devoting my life to service and launched a bunch of businesses quickly. And so I started meeting the right people and working on myself. And
tell us about Ink, Pray, Love.
That was the nickname and Instagram handle that my friends gave me because Eat, Pray, Love, the movie, changed my life. So that's where that came from, when I was like, well, I should probably shift what like my Instagram is, because I think before it was something stupid like Spiritual Gangster or something like that. So it was time to like,
it's beautiful.
Let's update. And so Ink, Pray, Love came about, and I was just chronologizing my journey and shifting where I was at, and opening businesses. My first business here was a bed and breakfast. And then we started tattooing out of the bed and breakfast because I made friends with the tattoo guys.
So have you always been in tattoos?
No.
You always have love for body art?
Yeah,
or is it something that you pick up since Bali?
No. When I was 18, I started getting tattoos because a lot of the dudes in my neighborhood and in that first kickboxing gym, they would start getting lots of tattoos, and I wanted to be like one of the boys. And I saw that.
So starting off as it's a cool thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And so then, as that started moving on and that started moving forward, I started getting much more like body art. And then once I got to Bali, I made friends with local tattoo boys, and that's when that was like my in. Like I went to their villages, I got drunk with their uncles, like we became friends. I made real Bali friends and hung out with them. And so then when I had my first bed and breakfast, I started tattooing out of the dining room, just as like a Airbnb tattoo shop. We changed it after about 3 months, and that started doing better than the Airbnb. And so we started having tattoo parties, and that started like getting a reputation. So then when my lease was done with the bed and breakfast, it was a no-brainer. Like I should open a tattoo. Yeah. I went to India, went on a spiritual journey, deepened my practice, met a guru, really saw that if I opened a business that came through during a meditation retreat, that I could have something that would be really worth doing. But it was during that first meditation retreat that I went through and had to forgive those guys who robbed me. I had to forgive my best friend who betrayed me. And I did a death meditation. And during the death meditation, I saw like, what am I holding on to? And if I die today, do I really want to keep holding that? And I had to let go of all of these traumatic instances that I was holding with so much anger and just like
resentment and
so
just
much
stagnant energy.
And I had to let it go. And when I let it go during the death meditation, the next day during the next session, I had the idea for that tattoo shop, and that became an instant success. And it was the most successful business I had. And I saw the direct link between letting go, using our spiritual practice, and then having new creative ideas coming through when we open up our channel and bring in new room for things to come through. And things were successful from then on. And then it's been 8 businesses in 8 years.
Do you see any connection between spirituality and body arts?
There definitely is, of course, and a lot of my ink became much more spiritual as I went on my journey, and it was a great way to signify different parts of my spiritual journey. So I think that's cool. And there's lots of tattoo art, in ancient indigenous cultures where that's a ritualistic, rite of passage, and it secures your standing in the tribe or what you've been through. So that's like there's deep meaning in tattoo art since the dawn of time. There's tribes that have been tattooing for forever, millennia. Yeah.
And what are some of your spiritual practices daily?
Breathwork, meditation, gratitude, deep presence. I practiced a lot of tantra in this path, and so a lot of just being present with the moment and taking little seconds to actually just enjoy a glass of water and really enjoy the glass of water, really be there present with that. So that had been a big part of the journey, where before I put so much time and energy into it, where I did a lot of 600 hours of yoga teacher trainings, 10 meditation retreats, 3 tantra trainings, authentic relating level 3, like all the forum, all sorts of, like I did everything I possibly could for about 3 years. And then I realized, like, okay, cool. Also, I want to build some shit, and went more into business.
Yeah.
And I'd still try to learn something every few months. But now at this stage, it's a bit more maintenance for me and a little less pushing.
Yeah.
And a bit more being.
Yeah.
So it's kind of shifted. Whereas before it would be like an hour every morning. Now it's like, cool, 10 minutes. I got stuff to do. And it's a bit different now.
Yeah.
I could probably go back to a bit more practice, I could say now.
Yeah. You're a relationship expert then?
What? No. I'm not a relationship expert.
I mean, 3 tantric trainings and 600 hours of body embodiment, and
that's a different thing.
And all of that. Like,
there's relationships, and then there's
let's open this chapter. Relationships. I'm dying. First of all, to all the ladies out there, are you single?
No. I'm in a new relationship.
What do you mean, like, no,
I'm in a new relationship.
You in a new relationship?
Very new. Yeah,
okay, this is a very new, okay.
Very new.
You don't have to share anything, but...
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, how's your dating life?
I mean, it was difficult for a while, because I found it was hard going from Bali to Vancouver to here to there. When I first got to Bali, the girl that I moved from Vancouver with here, she wanted to go back to Vancouver, and I wanted to be a hippie, and I was learning Indonesian, and I really wanted to be like a full-on yoga tantra guy. And she was like, fuck this hippie shit, I'm going back to the city. And I was like, cool, bless you. And we stayed friends, and she's still my friend, and it was cool. She actually ended up marrying one of my best friends from back in the day. So it was great. I'm happy for them. It was super sweet, because I needed to do this life, she needed to do that life. So we stayed with a lot of respect and care. And then I dated hippie spiritual girls in Ubud for a while, which was a toxic trash can of fuck ups.
Wow.
Because I realized how much
toxic trash can of fuck up.
Yeah, because it was like I did a tantra teacher, and it turned out to be super toxic, and there was a lot of bullshit involved, and it was really manipulative. And I really realized, like, just because people say they're spiritual doesn't mean they're a good person.
Do you reckon how many % are spiritual degenerates in places like Ubud?
A large amount. Ubud is derived off the term medicine, of the Balinese term obat, and it's definitely a place where people go that are lost to find themselves, because I was one of those guys. So I understand it. So a lot of people are doing the work on themselves, and they could be in a perpetual state of doing the work. So it's not meaning they're fixed.
Bypassing.
When are we ever fixed? But there's a lot of bypassing. There's a lot of, issues that are unresolved that need to be solved. So it can get messy.
Yeah.
And I was young, and I was dumb, and I didn't know any better. So I definitely got caught up in the mess and made mistakes, and definitely dated people that were not good for me. And thank God I have great friends. I'm rich in friends. That's one thing I'm really good at, is I have great friends around me, and they care about me.
Your family's everywhere.
Yeah. And they had an intervention. They're like, you need to break up with this girl right now. It's like, oh shit.
What was the most toxic story?
I was in a sword fight, black magic robbery, when I broke up with this girl that was, she cheated on me and was on Tinder, and then I cheated on her, and it was very public, because she was kind of a bit of a well-known tantra teacher, and it got really, really messy and ugly, and it was extremely stressful. And then when I broke up with her, 2 guys tried to rob our house in the middle of the night, and they had ski masks on and a sword, and I beat the shit out of one of them, but I punched the sword, so I severed my knuckle tendon, and it was wild. It was from her chaotic field that we think that brought in that experience. But I had broken up with her that day, and that night this happened, and so it was a wild experience. It was just crazy.
So you broke up with her during a date. You still slept over.
Yeah. We had a house together.
All right.
So it was a crazy experience that happened, right? And I really realized, like, there's energies out here that we don't know, that are at forces, right, that we have to deal with. So then I went to a Vipassana meditation retreat with my hand in a cast, and sat 10 days with this trauma. It was crazy, but it was very opening and freeing for me after to sit with that kind of heartbreak and trauma and pain for 10 days straight in seated meditation. Wild experience. And that was one of the more difficult ones. And then learning from that experience, I didn't want to date like a spiritual girl for a while, because I was like, oh, that was sticky, and I was too immature.
How somebody claims loudly about that.
it wasn't healthy, you know, and that was a bad experience. And she was also known for stealing. So she was in the papers for being like a bullshit teacher or something. So I didn't know any better at that age. And then I dated some girls down in Canggu, or one girl down in Canggu who's super cool. We're still friends, and she's awesome. And she was
very different vibes, isn't it?
She was
very different vibes.
Dirt bikes, graphic designer.
Yeah.
Complete, because I was scared of spiritual girls. Completely different end of the thing. I was like, fuck this hippie shit. I'm going to go and be a bit more normal. And I detached from my outward spiritual practice big time, because that experience scarred me. So I didn't want to be around any of this hippie bullshit.
Always been curious about, do you have better sex with spiritual girls?
I don't know if the spiritual part, could be, it depends. It depends if there's deep presence
generally
involved.
Like if you look at all your
data, what they say is true. People, the crazy ones are always the best in bed. That's just like how it is. That's just part of the game. but now I think deep presence is an actual real connection is the shit. But if it wasn't with deep connection, it would be definitely the ones that are a little like, I get it, because I'm a little crazy, so I get it. And so then that was a wild experience. And then it was chaotic during COVID, because I didn't know what was happening. I was losing a lot of money and I had my motorcycle accident. I got hit by a truck on my motorcycle. I broke both my legs, pelvis, elbow, Achilles, bladder. Lost like $250,000 during the time of COVID, plus my accident. So it was heartbreaking. It was like a rock bottom again. And it was because I wasn't sure of what I was doing in my purpose in life. It was because I feel like I strayed away from my path. I was rushing around the island, trying to do all these things at once on my Ducati, driving fast. During the accident, I wasn't, but I felt like it was karmically what was meant to happen.
What do you think the spirit is trying to tell you?
I needed to
during that phase.
I needed to check my ego, and I needed to realign with a different part of myself, and I needed to slow down. And it was like a karmic wake up call. And it was just like, yeah, this was my karma. I had it coming, and I had to eat it. So I was handicapped for a year, and that was a crazy time. I was in a wheelchair for 3 months. I was on crutches for 8 months, and I learned a lot about myself, and it was very humbling, a very humbling time. And I learned a lot about being alone, because I would go from relationship to relationship and girl to girl. And I was now handicapped by myself in my house, doing a 10-day self-administered Vipassana meditation retreat while you're handicapped alone. And it was fucking hard.
It's probably one of the hardest things.
There's many times I'd just be sitting there alone, crying into a bowl of soup in a wheelchair. Like, what the fuck is happening right now? And it was really difficult. And it was beautiful to happen to me, because I learned so much about myself, what I wanted in my life.
You just go to the depth of who you are.
Yeah. And then I went back to Vancouver to get a surgery, or to go to my cousin's wedding, and I ended up getting a surgery, reconnecting with my ex-girlfriend, the Vietnamese one that I went to Vietnam to meet her family, and started a relationship and thought I was going to move back to Vancouver. And then I realized Vancouver was just still too toxic, and they didn't have that spiritual connection there. And it was too materialistic. I ended up opening a couple businesses, and both of them weren't aligned to my values. We had a luxury car rental company. I was driving supercars. It was fun. I had my, whole setup again, and it just wasn't fulfilling. I was like, nah, this isn't it either.
It's fascinating to see, because I've got this struggle of, there are phases that the spirit's calling you, and you deep into your practice, and then there are months or weeks where the 3D world calling you again, because you have that capabilities to go and thrive and do shits and get things done, but then also you have this deeper calling, and like, how do you reason the voice?
It's difficult.
I'm like in the middle of it right now, to be honest.
It's difficult. It's a dance. I think there's got to be a middle path and a bit of both. And I realized, like, if I'm focusing too much on the material, and I'm driving supercars, and I'm living in a fancy downtown apartment, and there's Instagram fame in the city, that means more than it does in Bali. People are like, ooh, no one really gives a shit out here as much, right? It's definitely something that gets to your ego, and I didn't like it, and I didn't like the priority chain and the validation and all the stuff that the West had. And I was just like, this isn't it either. Like, I didn't know if that was somewhere I wanted to continue living. So I broke up with that girl, and absolutely broke her heart. That was a shit move on my part, because I'd broken her heart 7-8 years ago. And then
so you broke up before and you came back together.
Yeah.
And now this is the second breakup.
Yeah. So that was a shit move on my part, and I felt bad about it, but it just wasn't right for me. I tried it, and then I remembered that we just didn't have good banter. Like, it's so important just to have like some good.
Do you have a type?
It was before different in Vancouver, definitely Vietnamese, Asians, and then in out here it shifted.
Vietnamese, Asian, just remember, yeah. Right.
You were screaming my name earlier.
It's a dance.
And then it shifted now to just somebody embodied and kind, and I had been with a lot of girls that were probably tied to my past, so it was a little bit more of someone that I felt like I had to save, or that so then they would need me and I'd pay for everything, and it would be like this like weird old way of being that was
a bit of codependency.
Yeah, it was a little toxic, I would say, because they would be expected to make me happy and do things that make my life easier, and I pay for everything, and if they didn't make my life easier and make me happy, it was an imbalance because I would pay for everything. It was like this weird
a little bit transactional.
Yeah, it was just this old way of being that didn't.
Do you taste in women change over the years?
Yeah, definitely. And so then now like my love language has shifted. So acts of service is now like my larger one, whereas before words of affirmation was. I mean, touch is number one always. I'm a cuddly teddy bear, but the things that I see now is like, what can we build together, and also can someone let me be while I work and build things, and that makes my life easier that I could build with, and like that's what I like see that I enjoy now. And
like so, attunement.
Yeah. Ease and grace and like no headaches, because I got so much I'm dealing with at once. So when I'm dealing with someone that's it's consistent fighting, it's like, this didn't need to be a fight. You know what I mean? Like, this does not need to be a fight. So I don't have tolerance for that. If it's unnecessary drama because they're not regulating their emotions, or they're not able to be mature, or they have their own issues they haven't dealt with, it's like, I don't have space for that anymore. Whereas before, I thought this consistent fighting was like a
excitement.
Yeah, it's part of life. It's what keeps it spicy, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
it's like, that's not actually that healthy. Like, it's just what I learned growing up, and so now I see it's like, that's not how I date. That's not what I want. That's not how I want it to be. So having an easygoing, sweet, chill, supportive, kind like partner, that's the one.
So the top 3 qualities in women for you:
nurturing.
Yeah.
I would say like sensual. Yeah,
that's very important.
And like banter. There's communication, and it's funny and it's light, and they get my jokes because I fuck around a lot.
Very good.
Yeah, those are like top 3. Yeah,
nurturing, sensual, and banter.
Yeah. I don't know if banter's a quality, but you know what I mean? Like communication, like, can we fucking joke around? Can we go somewhere and it can be hilarious?
I laugh, yeah.
Can I joke around and you get it? Can you joke around and I think it's funny? Like, that's super important. That connection. I think a great display of intelligence is if you can be funny, especially in like a foreign 100%. Language. Like, if I learned how to be funny in Balinese, and that's like cool, that, and then I'm able to find places where I can say it, that I think that's skillful.
And also the best alchemy to like diffuse emotion as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And handling conflicts.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I like just to go places and crack some jokes. And I mean, you saw it when we're setting up this place, and there's a bunch of us in here. I just start fucking around and bring some levity to the room while we're setting up the set. And I feel like that helps everything run a bit smoother. But that's just how I roll, right? Not everybody rolls that way, and they have different reasons for it. But yeah, I think dating now really shifted, where I see a bit more long term. I care less about like what we're going to look like online.
Yeah.
Like before, because that tantra teacher, we were like the perfect Instagram couple, and I was young and fucking naive.
Did you have like photos or Instagram stuff like that? Like,
yeah, we did the full thing. Like we did photo shoots together. We were like somebody called us the David Beckham and Posh Spice of Ubud. Like we were the couple, and it was like that got to our heads. And I think at that age we really we really liked it. And now I don't give a fuck. Like I just want somebody who's awesome, and I don't need to have it be this big public thing.
Yeah.
It's actually more trouble than it is good to have it all out there, because everyone's going to have their opinions on a situation or try to sabotage it or whatever. It's just unnecessary. The actual perceived benefit of something like that is lower than what it would be. So I'm like, I'm not as hung up on that. So that's really shifted of like, what will people think? That's something that's really changed for me as well.
That is how you actually feel.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. It's going to get easier. And you're in a new relationship. Congratulations.
Yeah, she's cool. She's super easy. really chill. It's new, it's light, it's sweet, it's caring, it's deep, it's kind, so it's like I wasn't expecting something at that point so fast, but I met this girl at the gym and I saw her on the Stairmaster and I was like, damn, that's got to be somebody's wife. Like she had that energy of like somebody's wife.
From just looking at a girl on a Stairmaster, excuse me.
Yeah, she's had that look.
Right.
Like, damn, that's
right, that energy.
That's somebody's hot wife is what I thought right when I saw that. And then when I actually got to bump into her and talk to her, I realized like, she wasn't anybody's wife. She's single. And I was like, okay, interesting. Amazing. So kind of slowly made my way to grab a bite to eat with her and see what she was about. And it was cool. And I think traditional values are very rare these days. And people who grew up in a Western culture is a little bit difficult, especially dating girls from a Western culture. Sorry, I'll get some haters on this, but there's a lot of entitlement and a lot of like wanting to be feminists until the check comes around or wanting to be this until this happens. And I'm like, cool, I'm happy to pay for stuff, but also let's have an equal energetic exchange. Let's take care of each other in different ways, but let's find a way that it's just a different culture now. I feel like in romance and men and women and balances and things that I clearly noticed because I dated like the Western coach type. Yeah. And it would be the type that would go get themselves a cup of tea, but not me one at my house. I'm like, think about this. Like, you know what I mean? Whereas like in a more traditional culture, it's like, come home at 7, I'll have dinner ready for both of us.
Do you think also what you attract over the years depends on your own relationship to your own masculine and feminine energy?
Of course. I mean, that's definitely
and how would you describe your relationship to your...
I clearly saw the shift of the type of girls I dated. And definitely more conscious and sweet and caring. Like most of my exes since that crazy one were amazing and we're still friends and they're amazing humans and they're really kind and sweet. But I also saw what their cultural ideology was. So I think also cultural is a thing. So I think it's important to be with someone that comes from a culture or habits or grew up in upbringing that matches the type of lifestyle you want, type of like family you want, people you want. I think that's important too. Yeah.
Are you going to live in Bali for the rest of your life?
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know about forever. It'd be cool to have a farm in New Zealand. That's the only place, New Zealand and Australia is the only place that'll survive like a nuclear war, like a nuclear holocaust.
No way.
During the equator, if China goes at it with the States, everything around the equator and around that will be suffering from this nuclear war. Right? Whereas down that far, it'll still be able to grow crops.
I need to find New Zealand guy then.
Yeah.
Starting my farm. Yeah. Starting my farm down there. I don't know how are we with time, to be honest. There's so many things, but
what else you got?
Honestly, just your advice to what do you say to your younger Aren?
Stay connected to yourself. Like for the most part is like, what do you want to accomplish in the world? Or what do you want to be known for? What feelings do you want to feel? And do things that align to that. Yeah. Definitely. Make yourself proud. You don't need to do it for anybody else.
So just figuring out the way to understand yourself and know yourself from a deeper place.
And just, be a kind human. Like that's super important is just to do things that'll make enrich other people's lives and be an asset to every room you walk into. Yeah. It's important to live that way.
And any vision for the future for Ink, Pray, Love?
Yeah, I think I'd like to kind of get out of as many brick and mortar businesses as I have and get more into my personal business and coaching and retreats. And I like helping people start projects.
I heard a retreat's coming up.
Got a retreat coming up. Yeah, New Year's Eve in Bali. So it's like an entrepreneurial retreat, but also like adventure, all the cool shit I love about Bali. So just helping people come together to help them plan a really prosperous 2025, but also get to experience like the best parts of Bali that changed my life, that helped me see that there's so much more out there and be in the right circumstances in the right places. So I think what I can do best for people is help them have a new perspective on life. And no matter what they're going through, they can see my story. They're like, well, he's done worse. So if he can make it, launch all these businesses and turn out relatively okay, it's like there's hope. And here's some insights and some things I've learned from such a wide range of crazy experiences to then be able to, manage lots of people and businesses and kind of get my shit together. It's totally possible for everybody. And here's a little shift in perspective, and that changes your whole world. When you just change the way you look at things, it's going to shift everything for you. And I really like doing that for people. That's something I really actually enjoy. It's so much more fun than any of the other businesses, actually helping people through the experiences and trainings and work that I've done on myself. It's like, well, fuck, might as well help other people now. If you suffered this much, make it worth it.
And last question, if you describe yourself in 3 words, how would you describe yourself in 3 words?
Compassion, connection, and inspiration.
And summary your purpose in 1 sentence.
I am here to help people prosper and thrive.
Beautiful.
And I also fuck around a lot. Yeah, I'm funny.
We always laugh at Aren. Aren. I think that's a wrap for today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for sharing. And more stories, please.
You got it. I got lots.
No, I know. We barely started.
No. Thank you.
Thank you.